TGM Radio. Nitubatangira muno kuhuliriza iraka lya Bunyoro kuruga kuno mu diaspora hano mu TGM Radio. Nitubatangira muno kuhuliriza iraka lya Bunyoro kuruga kuno mu diaspora hano mu TGM Radio. Nitubatangira muno kuhuliriza iraka lya Bunyoro kuruga kuno mu diaspora hano mu TGM Radio.
Hello, mwebale muno kuija hairaka lya Bunyoro omu diaspora. Ninyowe Carolina Juna Kibuka Atenyi, your presenter or host of Iraka lya Bunyoro omu diaspora. Mwebale nywena, thank you so much for tuning in, and this is Iraka lya Bunyoro in the diaspora. Ninyenda muno kubatangira kya lero kinu kya sabiti. Kandi hairaka lya Bunyoro takagenzere haramuno ninyenda kubayijukisa nywena nti nitujja kuba ntukozesa orunyoro. We will be using Runyoro and English. Runyoro is the language spoken by the people who live in Bunyoro kingdom that is found in the western part of Uganda. As you know, our viewers, I normally remind you of what we had last week. Last week we were privileged to have hosted a friend of Bunyoro, ndugu ya Bunyoro, Mzee Ayubu Akiiki, who reminded us about the beauty that we have in Bunyoro. He gave us a little talk about the Maction Falls. He told us about Masindi Hotel and how important Masindi Hotel is. And he talked about so many things, that the reason why he loved Bunyoro while he was doing his tour in Uganda. And today we are very much privileged to be hosting Owek Kalembe Isaac Akiiki, Omutalindwa, Worukurato rwa Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom. Ali hamnaitwe hand now on Zoom. We are so much privileged to be hosting him. He has been on the show before, but today he comes back again as a very special guest. And we are privileged to be having him today to be talking about the series of Omukama Chwa, the second Kabaleega. And he is starting today with the introduction part of this series. And thereafter, he will be coming the very last Sunday of each month to talk more about this important man that we know Bunyoro has had. And we are all proud to be great and great-grandchildren of Omukama Chwa Kabaleega. And so the Omutalindwa of Orukurato rwa Bunyoro Kitara ali hamnaitwe hand today nagenda kutugambiraho more about this important man, this important king. And I will be asking him to be introducing himself just in a very short time to our viewers and listeners. Akiiki Omutalindwa, thank you so much for honoring us today once again and accepting to be here with us, although you're on Zoom, but we are seeing you, you're with us in the studio here. And so we are very privileged to have accepted once again to join us and take us through this series of Omukama Chwa, the second Kabaleega. And we are so much privileged, and thank you so much for honoring Iraka lya Bunyoro ha TGM UK. Kandi Eshweneri, sponsored by Bunyoro Kitara Development Association, and of course broadcasted or put on TGM radio. Owek Akiiki webale muno otyo muno babo bugambo buko bogambira aho ba viewers bite abandi bakumanyire bite. Of course abandi, this is their first time to tune in, so they might want to know more about you. Could you please tell us, talk to our viewers and introduce yourself? Then we'll be able to start the show about the great king Kabaleega, the man that we all love dearly.
Atenyi wewale muno, our audience, what an honor to have this time with you. I'm very privileged to be sharing information about our hero, Omukama Chwa Kabaleega. That was his praise name. Nsemerere muno kuba nayinywe akayiririzi ka hatu kano kubazaho emanzi yaitu Omukama Chwa wakabiri Kabaleega. Abangereza bamubatize when he was baptized in Sicily Island at St. Paul's Cathedral in 1907. Bakamweza ibara Yohana John kyonka nikigambo no yali ekomeire after listening to a sermon by his childhood friend called Absalom. He was a Bunyoro pastor who was sent by the missionaries to go and convince Kabaleega to convert to Christianity, and he chose John because of what happened to John in the Bible. So we were baptizing John Kabaleega. So in full, Nomukama White Yohana, that's John, Chwatu, Kabaleega, Amoti.
Wow.
Okuhangara kwe. Ugambegenye bazo. Niwe Omutalindwa. Omutalindwa niwe speaker wa Orukurato niwe parliament. Obukama bwa Bunyoro Kitara. I'm the speaker of the parliament of Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom. Basically, that's who I am. But Kabaleega I'm so passionate about Kabaleega.
I know. In
fact, I'm writing a book about him entitled The Life and Times of Omukama Chwatu Kabaleega, 1853 to 1923. Those of you who can access, those maybe who would like to read more about him in your free time, there is an article which I wrote, and it was uploaded on www.academia.edu. It is for academic purposes, like students, researchers, and people who would like to read more about academic issues. Once again, the link is www.academia.edu or edu. So you're going to find there that article, Omukama Chwatu Yohana Kabaleega, A Fresh Perspective. So it is just like a synopsis of the book that I'm writing about this great king. Yes. So far, I have moved about 1,400 pages in my book. Wow. And I'm still continuing. Yes. So tugaruke halibi ya Kabaleega. Kabaleega akaba manzi ya Bunyoro. Well, I think I should talk about him in the present simple tense rather than the past simple tense, because nobody has superseded him. Yes. Academics say that it takes 100 years to replace a hero. Manzo ngwebaho kitwale myaka 10 akorga omuntu ondi akumwingana donda akumukira. And it is true. But we always tell people that Kabaleega passed on in 1923. That's more than 100 years ago. We had his funeral rites, by the way. We had his funeral rites in 1999. Wow. After 100 years of his death. Wow. So this is the time now to get another hero, another hero to emerge and succeed Kabaleega. But before we get him, Kabaleega still remains our hero because of what he did. And I want us to emulate him. We are not royals, but there are important lessons that we draw from the life and times of Omukama Chwatu Kabaleega. And these I will be expounding them. One of them, he was foresighted. Yes. He was a visionary leader. Yes. He was selfless, and he was daring and fearless. Yes. And he was he knew what he wanted, and he went for it. Despite all the odds, even when he was captured, when he was arrested on the 9th of April 1899, he never lost hope. Even when they amputated his arm at Mengo Hospital, that was Dr. Cook, he never lost hope. Even when they took him to hospital in Nairobi, 1899, he never lost hope. Even when he went to Ekizai, he never lost his hope. And indeed, he lived there for 23 years, and even he returned. Unfortunately, he died at Mpumuire in Jinja in 1923. So those are some of the things. When I'm talking about Kabaleega, try to pick out what you can, you would wish to do as a way of emulating him. So I'd like to begin by giving some timelines. Yes. Just a synopsis of the important dates in Kabaleega's death, life. Kabaleega was born on June the 18th, 1853. June the 18th, 1853. 1870, that's another important date. That's when he ascended the throne. That's when he succeeded his father, Kamrasi, who had passed on the year before in Kiriandongo. May the 14th, 1872, that's when Baker declared Bunyoro as part of Equatorial Province, thereby setting into motion a collision between Kabaleega and the British. Because Kabaleega was not ready to accept Bunyoro to be under any other power or any other person except himself. And in fact, he was well, as we shall see, he was a graduate, by the way. He was a graduate. He knew a lot, history about our Bunyoro Kingdom and many things. And that's an important date. 1872, May the 14th to be particular, when Baker declared Bunyoro to be part of the Equatorial Province. Equatorial Province was part of Khedive Ismail's empire, because Khedive Ismail, who was the king of Egypt, had recruited Baker to ensure that all the Nile Valley area, that's from Lake Victoria up to Mediterranean Sea, was under Egyptian rule. And this province, according to them, Southern Sudan and Bunyoro and Uganda, it was called Equatorial Province. So Kabaleega never accepted that, and we shall see what happened. Then there is an important date, that was 1894 to 1899. If we were Palestinians, we'd call it Nakba. Let's see. To them, Nakba is doomsday, the dark days, the darker day. But this was the period of the Great War. The Great War that was launched by the British, assisted by the Waganda, by the Indians, by the Swahilis, by the Nubian soldiers from Southern Sudan, and many others to fight Kabaleega. It lasted 7 years, but for me I usually count 10 years, because the real fighting started in 1891 when Lugard annexed Southern Bunyoro, when he was taking Kasagama back to Toro, and he fixed his Maxim gun at Katungu, that is Shakabushenyi, and then he killed very many Barusu, that's where the Bunyoro soldiers who were guarding the Salt Lake at Katwe. About 6,000 Bunyoro soldiers died, and that part was taken away from Bunyoro, given to Toro, given to Ankole, and parts of Uganda. So that was Kabaleega really engaged the British for about 10 years, a decade. But the real fighting took place between 1894 to 1899. So that's an important timeline in the life and times of Kabaleega. Yes. Then the real invasion took place on January the 1st, 1894. As 1894 dawned, the Brits crossed River Kafo. Those of you who are familiar with the geography of Bunyoro Kitara, as you are coming from Kampala, before you cross River Kafo, on the western side, just about 3 kilometers on the western side, that's where the British, the invading army, forded River Kafo and attacked mainland Bunyoro. So that date, maybe we should be marking it every year, January the 1st. That's the day Bunyoro was invaded by the British. Then another important date was June the 30th, 1896. June the 30th, 1896. That's when the British formally declared that Kabaleega was no longer king of Bunyoro. So he was deposed on that day. That is the 30th of June, 1896. And as a result, the British declared Bunyoro to be a military district. Bunyoro was the only part of Uganda which was declared a military district, and it was ruled by military officers, not civilian officers. All the officers that ruled Bunyoro from 1894 up to 1933, because that's when we signed the first agreement. That's when Bunyoro signed an agreement with the British, 1933. That was during the reign of Omukama Satito Winyi the Late, who is the father of the current king, Dr. Solomon Gafabu Saiguru. Yes, he is the one who signed the 1933 agreement. So between 1894 to 1933, Bunyoro was an occupied territory, militarily governed by the British. So that date, when the British declared that Kabaleega was no longer king of Bunyoro, and they tried to put there his son, Yosia Kitahimbwa, Although Kabaleega was still alive and was still at large fighting the British, he had already crossed River Nile, and he was on the other side of River Nile fighting the British in Lango. Kabaleega was still alive, and the war went on. Then there is another important date, that is April the 9th, 1899. That's the day Kabaleega was captured. It was very early in the morning. I think it was around 5 or 5:30 there, between 5 and 6 in the morning, and it was a misty morning. There was a mist, so he was taken by surprise. And surprisingly, as you remember, for your information, the army that captured Kabaleega was freshly recruited, because Kabaleega had infiltrated the Uganda army that the British was using to invade Bunyoro. So at every step that the invaders took, Kabaleega was alert to it and he was aware. So after realizing this, the British had to recall that army and station them in Mubende, Mitiana, between Mubende and Mitiana. And they recruited fresh soldiers from India, from the East African coast. And this time they never came to Bunyoro. From Kampala, from the East African coast, they just crossed into Busoga, Kamuli, and then they crossed into Lango. Again, when they reached Lango, they had to bribe 2 land chiefs for them to make exactly where Kabaleega was hiding. And the African contingent of that army had to wear the uniform of the Barusura. So that's why Kabaleega was taken by surprise. Otherwise, if they had decided to use the other army, the original army, the war would have continued for many years. So that date, the capture of Kabaleega, that marked the saddest moment in our history. I think every year we should be celebrating this day. We should be commemorating it.
Omutalindwa, sorry to just ask obuturagamba to celebrating ekiro kinu tukikuze.
Commemorate. The word right is commemorate.
Commemorate, yes.
Commemorate, yes.
Yeah, that day. Then are we not celebrating the day that our hero was taken by surprise?
No, we are commemorating it. We should be remembering it. Okay. We should be marking it on our calendar. Yeah. We should be commemorating this day, April the 9th, 1899. In fact, to me, the important month in Kabaleega's life was April, because that's when he was captured, and that's when he died, as we shall see soon. Wow. He died in that month. So another important date is October the 7th, 1901. That's when Kabaleega arrived in the Seychelles Island. The Seychelles is a natural, it's a collection of islands. And he was imprisoned on the largest island in the Seychelles, that was Mahe. Yes. Together with Mwanga and other African chiefs like Prempe of Ghana and Muhammad of Somalia and many others. Yes. I think there are about nine African chiefs were imprisoned there. So that day, October the 7th, 1901, when he arrived in the Seychelles Island, marked almost the end of the struggle to liberate Kabaleega. Because you remember, even when he was captured in Lango on the 9th of April, a group of Barusura pursued the British together with their captives all the way. In fact, even in Mengo, when he was already hospitalized in Mengo and he had been amputated, an attempt was made to rescue him. That's why the Brits decided, before even he could be healed, to send them to take them to Kenya. So they marched them from Mengo Hospital, they marched them to Busabala. Those who know Busabala, Kampala, the geography of Kampala. Busabala is on Lake Victoria, and then they boarded a ship to Kisumu, and then from Kisumu to Nairobi. But even then, the Barusura walked all the way to Nairobi. It took them months, and they reached Kabaleega. But the Brits were alerted, and again they moved him to Kisimayo. Kisimayo near the border with Somalia, Kenya-Somali border. And the Barusura walked all the way to Kisimayo, and that's when the Brits decided to take him to the Seychelles Island. And the Barusura had vowed never to return to Bunyoro without Kabaleega, and most of them settled in Mombasa. So in Mombasa there is a colony of Bunyoro. We are going to find there are many Bunyoro. Most of them are descendants, or maybe fourth and fifth generation of Bunyoro. Those were the children who were born by the Barosura, who had gone pursuing, trying to rescue Kabaleega. Wow. So that's an important date. And then there is also an important date, that was February the 14th, 1923. February the 14th, 1923. That's when he was released from exile. A decision was taken that let him be released. In fact, as we shall see, the debate to release Kabaleega started as way back as 1904 in the British Parliament, by the way. Wow. The House of Commons. Whereby they passed resolution that man should be released. But the British officials on the ground, especially the Foreign Office, would not wish to hear any of that. And they detained him for 23 years until he reached the age of 70, and that's when he was released, when they knew that he was no longer capable of fighting. Yes. But to their surprise, when he arrived in Nairobi, I quoted the article in one of the British papers, which reported about it. Bunyoro, but the writer called them Baganda. The Waganda took over the streets of Nairobi wearing, raising tree branches and flowers welcoming him, which again sent shock to the British. That's why a plot was made. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but truth be told, Kabaleega was killed. That's why he stayed at Mpumwire, and he was not, even when he died, he was not allowed to pass via Uganda. His body was taken by his 4 askaris via Kamuli, then Masagari, and then Masindi Port, and then Masindi, and finally for him. So that's an important date. And then another important date in Kabaleega's life is April the 6th, 1923. That's when he passed on. Finally, dusk fell on Kabaleega's life. That's when he passed on. And then April the 26th, 20 days after his death, that's when he was buried. That's another important date. So it is important to know those important dates in Kabaleega's life. And maybe lastly, April the 9th, 1999, just recently, that should be 5 years after the restoration of our kingdom, when Iguru had already assumed the throne. That's when the last funeral rites were held in Bunyoro Kitara, marking the end of mourning. The Bunyoro mourned for Kabaleega for 100 years. And the kingdom on the 9th of April 1999 declared that the mourning was over and the last funeral rites for Kabaleega was held. So what we are in now, we are in a new era. This is an era of renaissance. This is an era whereby we should be proud that really our hero passed on, but he left a legacy that is unmatched in Bunyoro, in Uganda, perhaps in Africa.
Amazing.
So, yes.
Amazing. Webale muno Omutalindwa wa Orukurato rwa Bunyoro omukuru Akiiki kutugambira mu those important days. Kanihire all of you are viewers naba listeners baitu nywe na kutuhuliriza kandi mukuhandika dates ezo Omutalindwa zatugambire eziri very important. He calls them the important timelines of the life of the history of Omukama Chwa the second Kabaleega. Bayiraba muzihandike kandi ninyenda kubayijukiza nti Omutalindwa waitu Orukurato rwa Bunyoro Akiiki na handika ekitabu about the Omukama atugambire page ajja kuba natugambira takagenzere when he expects to be releasing this book kandi tusobole kuba ntweyongera kusoma more about Omukama ono akabali very important in Bunyoro. Hati tutakagenzere ku recognizinga obana okugenda hakuhumura Omutalindwa Akiiki. Tutubaliza totugambirege a little bit more about Kabaleega ya muzaire bazaire ki so that abokuba tugenzerege we are straight away to these important dates tituwa tugambira background yo batulagibaza tugarukire kuruga mukuwumura
ate mbe nkyasumula ensawo kagamba karagara kaki nkuija
kandi
yes
viewers
that's a preamble
aba viewers bayinu bagamba babaliza Bunyoro bakumanyire niwo
umbaire ninkyabaliza butakuru umbaire ni aba magamba bahuliriza oba bakutura ekigambo nyeki nkoleza nikyo audience combine both viewers and listeners audience abankigambe ntomunyoro abahuliriza bayitu nabarozi bayitu bakutura umbaire nimbaza habiro ebikuru omubumezi bw'omukama Kabaleega mbalizo ebiro bikuru kimbi 2 ekyo kubanga hali ntandikire ekyo kyazayo akazalo ebiro 18 okwezi kwa mukaaga mwaka gwa 1853 ekiro kya important timeline unde ekiro kindi tuna kumanya nubwo mwaka gwa 19 hali yatereire engoma aho kamurasi ise nkunabani mbasobora akabatulize umwaka gwa 1869 akatuliza Kiryandongo nuko umuguta bagulecha kitonya kunu hoima niho bakabona bajya kumuzika no kumara urufu no hali basomere nekiramu so umwaka gwa 1870 aho Kabaleega ni yaterere ngoma yafuko mukama wa 23 mukujja kubona nyongera kubagambira owababitu kulema obukama bwaito bwa bulemba bwa Bunyoro kitara nyongera hekiro kindi ebiro 14 omwezi gwa 5 mwaka gwa 1872 aho niho omungereza omwerambanda abanye tumweta mulejo akabaka wino mulejo guraira no sasa mwiri beka niyo yayizire Bunyoro yagamba ati Bunyoro agifunge kichweka ekya etwale eriya equatorio eriyembukama bwa Misiri rundi Egypt obwale mwagake di Ismail kino Kabaleega kyakabata akwikiriza kim nuhuke kyaletereza okutetegerezangana hagati ya Kabaleega na ogumuleju sasa mwiri beka no yamhandika ibintu bibi ebya sisi ibali ya Kabaleega abajungu bona abayizire oyo mwakabamo abajungu babi abatukuja kubantura abayendeze muno Kabaleega kandi baranda kwetegeza Kabaleega kike une kusoma bitabo bahandike rundi bandiko byabo no omu kandi akaba
onganyire kushwamo kusalamu habwokuba obwire bukutuleka kandi abantu bakaguza bakwenda
kunya
habwaki mwaikairo hoko funeral rights sake kaguzo kikuruga wa Judith Bigirwa kandi Judith Bigirwa no mukazi wa mani hano mu Bunyoro Development Association she's one of the executive members why did they take long to do the last funeral rites of Omukama
Kabaleega kangaruke Kabaleega was a hero Kabaleega was a phenomenon okuwiwaho kwa Kabaleega no kutuza kwa Kabaleega kikakolera kimwe Abanyoro kubi muno kyatugare enyuma muno tukabata kusobora kumwebwa ekyo kimu ekya kabiri tukabata kusobora kumara urufuru wa Kabaleega tuli omubulemi obwabajungu n'abaganda abatujojogyaga nkugambire Bunyoro kabata kulemebwa as a civilian unit ikaba iri military it was a military district ekyo kya kabiri ekya kasatu omukamu bwagarukireho hakabaho okwetomboita kubanza ro mutabana yagarukire kiteyimbwa kana myaka 2 ayagarukire oduhaga nabo akalema baitu kandi ali ansi abajungu in fact bamwetaga abaganda bakamweta omuganda omubaze ibara miti demuseti akamwete popa rundi dog embwa Sato Bunyoro yayizeho isamaze kufa tumaze kutuza Kabaleega 1923 Sato Bunyoro yaje mwaka gwa 2024 yali makanga kana musanju obukama wabo yobote yabuyaho bigane for republic ali kama tutandika mwana kwajura n'abikiyo ati tuwagaruka hano kuiko wa obukama babo garuireho kienda nena 11 June 1994 kudu twatandika kusimba na makanda runa maguru niyo twagamba baita ati myaka 10 kera biro Kabaleega kwasirwe leka tumuwe isoke tuyema wasaka close ebyo kuganya tugambe hati biregarukira obuhyaka ezo nizo nsonga ezike habwaki byaro byakaire emyaka 10 kumara ofuwa Kabaleega kumara okuganya kwa Bunyoro.
Omukuru Judith Owek Akiiki atugarukiremu habwaki baikairoho kugaruka kukora funeral rites z'omukama Chwa the second Kabaleega. Omukuru Omutalindwa roho ndana kagwize is April 9th. Has the kingdom commissioned this date as a commemoration date of Kabaleega?
Not officially, but even this year, to news releases and to handing teka ikihandiko nturukia ntumanyisa Bunyoro ntumanyisa ihangaliyo na abantu bona ekiro kino nikyo Kabaleega yakwatiriweho mulango kuri muswampo harubajurwa riva nayo.
Okay.
Kyonga tokwenda tukifuma ebiro bino obukama tulabiyeho tugambe ebiro bino nkwana timelines zino so tusaba kutumarking all these timelines but at least the key ones tuinaga ebiro kubimanya tune kitukoraho kujukiraho emanzi yaitu Kabaleega.
Hati omukuru Owek Omutalindwa orukurato rwa Bunyoro tusigaizeyo obwire buke kugenda hakuhumura kyonka nitwijja kuba nitugaruka nitukaguza more about this great man habo kuba abantu hano bayingi bakusima Patrick Kienki akusima omukuru Samuel Kakembo Kitone na wasimire omukuru Steven Atwoki webale kutuninga in. I suggest that the educative programs should be in English. You want to encourage as many people outside Bunyoro to learn this important history. Ogo niwe omukuru Steven Atwoki katuramu akugamba ebintu bino tuina kubibaza omurunyoro, which I agree with him because we're trying to genda ku educating abantu about the history of Bunyoro, then tukebaliza omurunyoro, then abantu bajja kubyetegeza tinikuwa Mutalindwa orukurato rwa Bunyoro.
Nyo tina tabu nkikironize negereka tukolesa orujungu abantu bakiro orungu orujungu bakurumanya ekitabu kine kyonko handika no murunyoro tukujja kitranslate tukituko murunyoro abaraba ne betagamba garukiro mu murunyoro orunyoro ngusaza nkentera translate amayizi ego
orusazota
Kinteretanzeri amaizi
akibagambire kyo tinja kigarukamo omukuro bwabaza togarukamu na bwekyo. I agree with Steven Atwoki, we should do this history in English so that people get to know the culture and the history of Bunyoro. Hati nitugenda kuhumura mukake nitujja kuba ntugaruka next program next part of this show no yongera kutugambiraho more about omukama Chwa background ye no buzaru ebwe nabamuzaire nabiki byona, then we will start from there next week oboligaruka obundi katugaruke Akiiki turorangane after 5 minutes. Kale bye inywena tuliriza. We are all for a break now.
Nimuhuliriza iraka lya Bunyoro kuruga mu diaspora on TGM Radio.
Hello, mwebaleyo aba listeners baitu na ba viewers baitu oba audience yaitu nko Omutalindwa kurato lwa Bunyoro nko bwa suggestingire tubete hati ningenda kuba straight away calling back Akiiki agarukemu kutugambira ebintu introduction part of omukama waitu wa amani chwa second Kabaleega. Hati Akiiki, I'm meant to understand that or to hide the timelines is omukama but I'm meant to understand that there are some facts about Kabaleega that cannot go without mentioned.
Exactly.
Just tell us briefly otakuze explaining abokuba because bazo more obujja kuba ni butuleka otyo muniki.
Okay, straight away I'll go to the father. Kabaleega was the son of Omukama Kamrasi Kewambe the fourth, who ruled Bunyoro from 1822 to 1869. That was the father. Omukama Kamrasi Kewambe the fourth. And for your information, Kewambe is a name given to the king who has usurped the throne. So he was not meant to be the king, but he usurped the throne for reason we shall see later. But the mother was called Kanyange Nyamutahinguru Aboli. I will be explaining the meaning of that name later. His elder brother, Kamrasi had 38 children, but among the firstborn was Kabigumire Ruhwino. That was Kabaleega's eldest brother. There were others, sisters, princes and princesses. Eldest son, Kabaleega had the number of children Kabaleega had is not clear. Others state is between 150 to 300 children. Wow. In fact, this man, John Yakatura, listed 78 children of Kabaleega, but the real figure is not clear. It is between 150 and 300 children. The official wives. So Justin Akimoso was the firstborn of Kabaleega. He was a military commander. He died in war. He was there in action when Kabaleega was captured, and he was fatally wounded, and he died on the way as they were marching them from Lango to Mengo, and he died somewhere in Nyakasongora. And his grave is there. That's why he was buried. And even when his grandmother, Kabaleega's mother, Kanyange Nyamutahinguru, passed on in exile in Mengo, she was brought and buried alongside Justin Akimoso. Official wives, Kabaleega had 3 official wives. By official wife, I mean the Omugo. Oh, yes. When Christianity was introduced, kings were told to marry only one wife, but Kabaleega only one wife. That's the Omugo. But being Kabaleega's time, polygamy was the order of that day, and it was acceptable in African societies. So he had 3 Vagos, 3 official wives. These are one, the first one, was Princess Mariza Mukakiabara Bagaya Akiiki, who is called partner number 1. That he was the eldest sister of King Kasagama of Toro. You remember these are Babitos, and Babito, there is incest between Babito. So she was a Muvito, married to a Muvito. She is the mother of Just Nyakimosa. The second wife was called Nzahe Wagaya, also Wagaya, Nzahe. I think she was also a Toro, because Toro produces beautiful women, especially.
Really?
The Banyamwenge and others. So that's partner number 3. Partner number 3 is not known, but it is said she was Nyankore Kati. She was a beautiful lady from Nyankore, who was brought to Kabaleega and settled around Kinogos there. Around Kinogo there, but the name is not easily traced. So those were the official ones. There are 3 popular praise names. How Kabaleega was praised by the people. There are very many praise names for Kabaleega, but the popular one was Ruhigwa, meaning persecuted. He was a persecuted guy right from the day he was announced as the successor of his father. The majority of Babito opposed him because they wanted Kabigumi to be the successor. The Brits came, all the Brits, apart from Emini Pasha and maybe Governor Crawford, all of them wrote bad things about. So he was persecuted. That was Ruhigwa. That's his praise name, one of his praise names. The second praise name was Ekitule Kinoberavem, one who was intolerant of rebels. Kabaleega could not tolerate any rebel, any person, be white, black, he couldn't. In fact, one of the people whom he ordered to be killed was his sister, a princess, Kabaleega's daughter, Kabaleega's sister, who was opposed to him. He had her killed.
Wow.
So he could them, one who was intolerant of rebels. Then the other praise name was Rukolimbo Nyantalibwa Mugobe. That's peas we have in Kole. In Kole, those are peas in Bunyoro, in Africa. After the peas have sprouted and they have many leaves, you pluck off the leaves and boil them and then pound them and into ash, which we eat. But for him, his leaves could not be eaten. So he was Rukolimbo Nyantalibwa Mugobe. Nobody could dare touch him or any part of him. So that's the peas whose green leaves cannot be eaten as a vegetable. And Rutamahanga, consumer of rebellious nations. All parts, Bunyoro Kitara, the extent of Bunyoro Kitara was from southern Sudan, part of Ethiopia, eastern Kenya, western Kenya, northern Tanzania, and up to the Ituri border. That was the boundary of Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom. Ituri, that's Ituri Forest in DR Congo. That was the forest. So all those people who had rebelled before Kabaleega came to power, including Toro, were crushed. So that's where that praise name came from, Rutamahanga. And then, of course, there was the other one, the Defiant. And then the last fact that I want to mention is his gun, his Maxim gun, rather not Maxim gun, his rifle, a Remington rifle. It was called Babwigairevata. How dare you block the way? Nobody could block Kabaleega. If he meant to fight, he fought. And even the Brits tested his fighting skills, and many died, as we shall see later as expound. So those are the important facts that I need to explain. And can I know the figures as well?
Yes.
There are some figures. Yes. 3, that's the official wives. I've already mentioned them. I had 3 official wives. Bago. 16, that's the age he ascended the throne. He was an adolescent, aged 16, when he succeeded his father. 23, he was the 23rd Muvito king of Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom. 24, those are the number of years he spent in exile. 24 years he was in exile, captured there in the Sicily Islands. 33, that's the number of days Emini Pasha spent with Kabaleega at Imparo, and when he came to write about him. And in fact, Emini Pasha was a Jew, a German Jew. He was a doctor. He's the only Mzungu, he was the only white person who wrote well about Kabaleega. And the British colony officers, the Brits hated him. They called him names because of having written well about Kabaleega. But Kabaleega he shared time with a German Jew, for 33 years at Imparo, for 3 days at Imparo. Then 38, those are the number of siblings, his brothers and sisters, the princes, the children who were sired by his father Kamrasi. 56, that's the age at which he was captured. He was captured when he was 56 years, and he went to live for 24 years, dying at the age of 70. 70, that's the age at which he died. And that's what the Bible says, that if you have lived a good life, 70, you can pass on at 70. Wow. And he passed on at 70, but he was poisoned. He was supposed to have lived more than that. Amazing. And lastly, the number of children. One of the records mentioned is 140. I think this is Nyakatura. 140 children, 78 sons, and 62 daughters. And one of them, by the way, is from my clan, Kabaleega. Wow. That Kabaleega. I'm Mbiasa by clan, but there was a daughter of Kabaleega called Kabaleega. So now we can tentatively say 140 children. So I think
the figures about Kabaleega's in
the figures
life.
Yeah.
Abakutuuliriza Omutalindwa waitu atugambire facts and figures about Omukamachwa Kabaleega the Great, na habwekyo mwikale abatahulire figures zinu kurungi na facts about Kabaleega. Please, I'm just reminding you that this show is recorded, so you can always go back to TGM Facebook and see what we have talked about, and you get to understand those things that we have rushed. You can hear them better in our recorded show. Hati Omutalindwa waitu, give us a little background about Kabaleega.
I've told you how the date he was born. I've told you his father Kamrasi, his mother Kanyange Nyamutahingura. Kanyange Nyamutahingura was a very beautiful, should I call her girl, lady. Yes. Because let me begin with her background. She was a very beautiful girl, aged around 16 years. When the Barasura, in one of their military expeditions, by the way, it was Kamrasi who started the creation of a standing army, trying to recover the lost territory, the territory that Bunyoro had created. So he would send his soldiers to go and raid various parts of the former kingdom. And in one of the expeditions in Kabaleega, they captured very many people, very many cattle, and people. Among the booty, among the things that they captured, was a very beautiful, around 16-year-old girl. And they said this one is fit to be Kamrasi's wife. Yes. Light complexion. Wow. Those were Tuku. So they brought her to the palace. He said, Your Highness, Your Royal Highness, we have brought you very many things, including this girl, and we suggest that you marry her. And Kamrasi couldn't say no. He married her, and they produced a baby boy. Called who? Whom, because the people were overexcited, they called Akana Kabaleega, a child from the people of Kabaleega. Amazing. But because that was a long name, it was reduced to Kabaleega. So that's where Kabaleega's name came. That's one version. The second version was that Kanyange Nyamutahingura was from Busongora, that which was one of the territories, former territories of Bunyoro Kitara, which was ruled by Kogere. It was the traditional territory of Kogere. So she was from Mwenge, between Mwenge and Busongora, and that's where she grew. That's where Kabaleega grew up. But during Kamrasi's reign, I've told you, he usurped the throne, and he was opposed by very many Babito. At one time, he was forced. He fled to Kabaleega, and that's where they stayed for some time. And because Kabaleega was born in Toro, and he stayed in Kabaleega, so they decided to call Kabaleega that boy Akana Kabaleega, because he stayed there. And indeed, in his childhood, Kabaleega grew up in Toro. Wow. He hunted, he raised cattle, and his hunting ground, he wanted as far as Nyakasura. where Ndahura, after leaving the throne, the first Mucho's king, after leaving the throne, he left with his mother in Amweru, and they settled in Nyakasura. So Kabaleega used to stay in that area. So he knew the area very well, and that area, Kamrasi entrusted that part of Bunyoro, southern Bunyoro, to his brother-in-laws, those members of the Bayonza clan, because Kanyange was from the Bayonza clan. So the Bayonza were the chiefs of Toro and the surrounding areas. So that's and Kanyange means we know Kanyange come from the word Nyange. That's an egret, the whitest bird. So as a way of trying to describe how beautiful that girl was, they called her Kanyange. Nyamutahinguru again, meaning someone whom you can't fail to notice. If you are a man, they say the lady who turns men's neck, the lady passes, and then you turn to look at her in admiration. So both names were descriptive of the beauty of Kabaleega's, of how beautiful Kabaleega's mother was. And indeed, it is said Kabaleega took the light complexion of his mother, Kanyange Nyamutahingurwa.
Omutalindwa waitu Akiiki ebigambo ebyo byotugambiraho as an introductory part of series of Kabaleega that we are going to be doing every end of month, Sunday, the last Sunday of each month. Omutalindwa wa Bunyoro ajja kuba nagaruka kutugambira more about this great man, Omukama Kabaleega. Tusigaizeyo obwire buke muno kyonka Mukama waitu ajja kutuha mukaire kataito. I acknowledge the people who have tuned in today, and for those of you who I won't mention, please do not get angry with me. We will be mentioning you again next time. Omukuru chair wa Bunyoro Kitara Development Association, Hadija Kisembo, akusimire muno Omutalindwa waitu, webale muno Akiiki kutugambiraho obugambo obwo twegeseze about Kabaleega. My mom Alisa Tenyi at Gonza nawe asimire. By the way, she's coming next week, 1 week after 1 week from now, kubaza her marriage. And so please, Omutalindwa, tune in to hear about the marriage if she has done it well. Patrick Kikia is watching. Kabaleega, Kabaleega. That is Patrick Kikia. Webale muno kutuninga ini. Mujune Edward naiwe tukusimire muno na comment yawo tuganye tutubalizo mu Runyoro kyonka nka omukuru atwoki Steven ko bwa suggestingire we need to teach people about Bunyoro, so there is some time when we will need to speak in English so that people get to know the history of Bunyoro. Morina Linda, treasurer of Bunyoro Kitara Development Association, naye webale kutuninga in tuija kuba both treasurer white agamba. Some people who don't understand Runyoro will miss out. It's better both English and Runyoro for the benefit of everyone. Webale muno abwoli kusuggestinga, we will be doing that. Omukuru Lilian Musana Bambi webale for tuning in, webale nywena Lydia naiwe kiza, webale kuba naitwe Dana Kemirembe from I think US. Kasaija naiwe webale muno kutuninga ini. Robert Akiiki, wow, from Italy, thank you for tuning in. Bojo inywe abantu mukuru gahara nimuhuliriza betu kugamba ha Bunyoro, kwegesa history ya Bunyoro. Omutalindwa waitu abalize bigambo bingi about the great man Kabaleega. And I just want to remind you, all our viewers and people listening to us, a t-shirt za Kabaleega tuzina. Kabaleega, Atenyi, Empako, Lega, Inywena bakwenda t-shirts z'omukuru, the great king of Bunyoro. Please feel free to order these on our website. Hati Akiiki tugenda kugenda batwairo dakika 5 tugambireho series zino genda zikorota. What should people expect? Brief, in short, in a summary, so that people get excited and want to wait for you at every end of the month to listen to what you're going to tell them.
kija kusikikira bwiro bumurampa nyowe I can talk endlessly hati bino bimazire nkujja genda formal introduction ya Kabaleega nduga his background then how he ascended the throne, the 2 years of fighting, how he was coronated, how the coronation took place at Mubende and what followed after, how he managed to overcome his brother who was supported by most of the royal families, Kabigumire, and how Kabigumire died, and the character, what type of person is Kabaleega, the character and personality of Kabaleega. I'm sure most of you have read about Kabaleega from different sources. If you read Samuel Becker, you are going to have a negative attitude towards Kabaleega, but he was not that, and that's what I want to disapprove, to dispel the misinformation that was created about Kabaleega. I'll talk about his diet and hobbies. He was a lively man. What did he eat? What did he do in his free time? And what was his family life? What type of father or husband was he? Then from there, we shall go into the hardcore issues, the reforms that he instituted, until I think we shall end on a sad note, how he left this world, this earth. But most important of all, I want us to draw lessons. I may not bring them out formally, but try to see what did Kabaleega do that you can also do, or you can do better. Amen. To make Bunyoro or our society better.
Mwebale muno abakutuliza wemanda muno mukuru Omutalindwa wa Bunyoro Kingdom kutugambiramu egyo introduction party ya series za Bunyoro za Omukama waitu chwa Kabaleega. Itwena we tugonza muno kandi itwena we find pride to be his great children, and we continue his legacy as much as we can, and that's why we introduce this show, to show the mighty power of this man. And we are very grateful for you to have accepted to come and give a special talk about this guy, this Kabaleega man or king, so that people get to know the good he did for the land of Bunyoro, and we are privileged that you are able to give us that time. Thank you so much. Webale munono obugambo obuke ba viewers baitu Omutalindwa Bunyoro Kitara Akiiki Isaac Akiiki Kalembe tugambire genda kubana tugambire ebyo byone byabalizeho hati kugenda off air munganyire nywenda bentabaliza amabara today abenta appreciating it. But thank you so much for tuning in and for following us on Facebook Live, on TGM apps that will lead you to all our social media platforms that we use. And I want to say this is Eiraka lya Bunyoro, sponsored by Bunyoro Kitara Development Association UK, and thank you so much for following us, and may we continue this great journey we have started together, and we will be coming back next week same time at 7 o'clock. Muikale kurungi. Have a good week ahead of you. Mutyo muno abanyoro na abanyoro kati na aba friends baitu aba Bunyoro Mukama alinde.
Mwebale muno kuija kuhuliriza Eiraka lya Bunyoro kuruga mu diaspora on TGM Radio.
Babiri balibo mu muhanda, babiri balibo mu musiri, babiri bali baba byambire, omwali twalwa omwali siga.